Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we're going to learn about this cool guitar. This is a Gibson AMS Zzounds exclusive Voodoo Juju Les Paul. This thing's got some very striking looks, it's got this really evil vibe, and to tell you the truth, this thing has some really interesting specs that we'll go over. But how did this dealer exclusive run even get its start? Where did the inspiration come from? So this is actually a reissue of the original Voodoo series. Back in the early to mid 2000s, Gibson was doing a lot of kind of more metal inspired guitars. Some people thought they were cheesy, other people really dug these models. As time has gone on, they've become slightly popular on the used market. We're talking things like the Gothic series, there's the Vampire series, the Menace series, but pretty much the big top dog is the Voodoo. So the original Voodoos were done up in a Les Paul shape, SGs, Explorers, as well as Flying Vs, and their big signature look was this. They have a swamp ash body with a red grain fill with a black satin finish over top of it. That's how they create this Juju look, and you can feel this wood grain on it. So that's kind of a cool little thing that these guys have going for them. We recently reviewed the 2019 Michael Clifford signature Melody Maker that had a very similar finish going on. But other specs on the originals include an ebony fretboard, and the Les Pauls weren't actually official Les Paul models as far as the headstock logo, and they did not have inlays on their ebony fretboards, but they did have a freaky little quirky skull guy on the 5th fret. Why they chose the 5th fret, I don't know, and it's up to you whether you like the skull guy. It's kind of an acquired taste in my opinion. And they had specially wound 496R 500T pickups in these things, so those are very hot ceramic. Definitely built for more aggressive playing styles. And now we pop over to these tributes or reissues or version 2, whatever you want to call these things. They are an exclusive for the dealer AMS and Zzounds, and they first started putting these guys into production in 2016, and they still do many limited runs even yet till today. You just gotta pre-order them. Unfortunately, the Explorers and Vs are left out, but there are the Les Pauls and the SGs. The Les Pauls brand new are $15.99 and the SGs are $14.99. Now, I'm only going to talk about the Les Paul on this one, but it's kind of like an over-glorified studio with changed up specs. That's the best way I can put it. But here's the biggest differences between the reissued ones and the original. So first off, remember how I said there's no Les Paul model silkscreen on the originals? I did that for a reason, because the reissue gets it, and it's also red just like the Gibson logo was. And now one of the more controversial specs here is it has a Richlight fretboard instead of ebony. You gotta remember, when this was first reissued, that was in the whole Richlight era. Now that we're back to ebony, I'm surprised that they haven't switched the new ones to ebony, but they're probably just trying to keep the runs synchronized, or maybe Gibson needs to use up some Richlight stock. But the trade-off here is these guys actually get a black binding. That's right, you have fret nibs here. It's a little bit hard to see because, you know, black fretboard mixed with black binding, but that is a huge spec difference. Also, you're gonna notice, this guy has red dot inlays. So gone is the quirky skull guy. So if you didn't like that, great. I wish they would have went with trapezoids, but at the same time, the dot inlays have a very certain vibe with this guitar that I think I enjoy it. Maybe it's just because they have a red pearlescence to them, but the side marker dots are also red. While not being a spec of the guitar, the case for the original Voodoo series was very special, so when they decided to reissue that for this limited edition run, I was very happy to see that. Now if you're curious, what makes this case different from the original run? This one has the more modern handle style instead of that kind of braided stuff. And most importantly, the logos have changed. The originals say Gibson USA, whereas this new one says Gibson, and it kind of bugs me that the logo's a little bit off center. It's just kind of a sweet snakeskin-esque red and black vibe. Very cool. But now the biggest changes that they did to these. You're gonna notice, this one looks significantly different from the original run. What they did is they reversed the finishes. So instead of a red grain fill, we now have a black grain fill. And then they put that red satin finish over top of all that. So once again, you can feel this wood grain. It's not going to be 100% smooth. That is done like that by design. They chose to do it this way. But as with all satin finishes, as you play them a little bit, they'll start to rub into a gloss. You can see this one kind of has a little bit of that phenomenon right here, and this neck has definitely been played in a little bit. So this one's got more of like a semi-gloss feel to it. That'll happen very quickly if you're actually playing these guitars. I'm kind of torn between which one I like better. It depends on the example for me. Some of the originals look really cool. I love it when the red is really pronounced and it strikes straight through that black finish, but not all examples look good. So this one, it's like every example is going to look pretty good as long as you find one with a really cool wood grain, because the dominant color this time is red. And I think it was really cool that they did that, because now this is more like a version 2 rather than a straight up reissue. So if you happen to have an original, there's still a reason to get the newer one. But perhaps the biggest change on these that not enough people really realize is they now have a maple neck. The originals appear to be mahogany. I mean, take a look at this wood grain. That's definitely mahogany. But these new ones get maple. Now, the beautiful thing with maple is sometimes you can find heavily flamed examples, even on lower end, studio model guitars. And that's why I picked this one up, because it's just so heavily flamed. Now, most of these do have some sort of flame figuring, but if you order one of these brand new, I cannot guarantee that it's going to be as highly flamed as this one. And of course, you also get the cool swamp ash body on these guys. But it is important to note that the reissues are a swamp ash body with a swamp ash top. You can really see that in the cutaway. It's just a very thin top that they do. Now, I believe the originals are done the same way, but I couldn't find any definite photos where I could see the top, but just judging by the wood grain difference between the top and the back, I would assume most of the originals were done like that as well. The pickups might have changed, we'll have to check that on the workbench, but they still have that black and red double slug vibe. So there you have it. Kind of a cool, less traditional Les Paul. I mean, if you're not really into the vibe of the colors of this, the best options that you would have would maybe be a Swamp Ash Studio. It has the same Swamp Ash body and top, but they have the mahogany neck. And those guys are just finished in natural, so if you like natural Swamp Ash instead of this vibe, definitely go for that. But if you must have the maple neck, the closest thing I could think of was the Music City Junior. That's a very specialized kind of country guitar with a B bender or a G bender built in there, but those are swamp ash bodies with maple necks. So let's go ahead and throw this guy on the workbench, take an individual look at all the parts and specs, and then we'll get to a playing demo. Alright, inside the Voodoo Juju Les Paul, it appears we have a two-piece top right here. I kind of like the way it looks though, because then you get the super rings here, then the more tight stuff right there, so I think that works. But I'm getting super flashbacks to the Michael Clifford signature Melody Maker looking inside these pickup cavities. So JJ for Juju, which is the style of finish that they called this one on this particular run. And looks like LPSV, Les Paul Studio Voodoo perhaps. And then A19, so this is a 2019 model. Looks like we got a little bit of fraying going on here that could have easily been cleaned up like that. But what's kind of interesting here is you can see it's a full width top here, but by the time that they've carved the belly out of this thing, when you get to the edges, it just looks like a small veneer. But it's certainly interesting to take a look at a swamp ash body on a Les Paul. You don't see that too often. But now let's take a look at these pickups. So the original ones had the 496R 500T, but they were slightly modified. I'm not sure if this is exactly the same thing going on, but these are dubbed the Satin Double Slug. Now, satin referring to the finish that's used on this, and double slug meaning you do not have adjustable rows of pole pieces on here. Now, typically Gibson will use that on cheaper models, but maybe there's a particular reason that they did these like this. I'm really not sure. But you'll notice straight from the factory, this one did not have the patent applied for. Man, that's really interesting. So the fact that this has this tells me that they were not trying to emulate the 496R 500T, because those would just say Gibson USA on the base plate. We need to check out these readings, because the official website actually calls these like Voodoo Les Paul pickups, but are, man, it's a PCB board. It's not going to let us get the readings. Unless maybe it's even higher than that? Nope, sorry, I tried. We're not going to be able to get the readings on these. Sometimes those PCB systems, they'll let you get the reading, other times they just don't work. But since I've already played this, I can already tell you, they're likely pretty hot. But moving along the body here, in case you missed it earlier, the rhythm treble poker chip right here actually has the red lettering as well. And once again, seeing all that beautiful wood grain here. Then you move on to your knobs. These have red lettering and they're the black top hat style. Kind of an interesting thing. And no pick guard stock from the factory on these. But as far as the bridge is concerned, it's just your standard bridge, but it's black instead of regular chrome. You can see the API branding right there. And the tailpiece is also standard equipment, advanced plating incorporated, branded on the back. But moving on from the Swamp Ash top and body, once again, a maple neck with a rich light fretboard that is bound. So here you can see the difference between the black binding and the rich light fretboard. There's not a lot of a difference. You really got to get the light in there to see this binding. But a traditional cream colored binding surely wouldn't have looked that good. And here's a closer look at those red acrylic inlays. It's got a certain vibe to it, that's for sure. Standard 12-inch radius with the medium jumbo frets as always. As far as neck specs, our nut width is 1.71 inches. And by the 12th, 2.09. These are advertised as 60 slim neck, so let's see how that is. First fret neck depth, 0.83. And by the 12th, 0.89, so that definitely fits that description. The nut itself is also black, and you just kind of get a satin black truss rod cover on these guys. Here's your truss rod itself. Everything's looking good there. And of course, our red Gibson logo and Les Paul model silkscreen. Moving on to the back here. I don't know if you can really call this a difference because it's more so a sign of the times and the specs of current guitars versus what was used back in the early 2000s, but these utilize that built-in shielding style backplate. Sometimes these can be troublesome for as far as grounding and you actually have to ground off to them. Other times they work just fine. But here's what the inside control cavity looks like here. Just like I was thinking, a PCB system, and it's all based on quick connect, so it'd be really easy to swap out the pickups if you wanted to try something a little bit less hot in these. It's a real shame. I would have to snip these off to get a reading. I don't think it's worth doing. And here's our toggle switch cavity. But I just absolutely adore the back of this one. Love all this wood grain. It's kind of got a downward pattern and then an upward pattern. It's just beautiful. But the side here utilizes a black plastic output jack, and then you get the large style strap buttons. That's also a very small difference between the originals and this. And of course, this beautifully figured flame maple neck. That was definitely a nice find. And as far as our serial number, this is the old 2019. So there's two different styles you can find in 2019. This one, where it's 19, meaning 2019, and then the other one, it would be 19 here. That tells you whether you were under Juskowitz ownership or the new era that we're currently in today. And regular black or over tuners. All said and done here, despite, Swamp Ash having a reputation of being lightweight and this actually having 9-hole weight relief, 9 pounds, 14.5 ounces. That's pretty chunky for a modern day guitar. Let's go ahead and plug this thing in and hear how it sounds. What are my final thoughts on the new Voodoo Juju Les Paul? I really enjoyed this one. At first, when I sat down to do that playing demo clean, it's like, okay, I don't feel like playing dark and dirty stuff with this thing, but as soon as you kick that distortion on, it's like, yeah, I like where this is going. It's time to get down and dirty. But is it really worth paying $15.99 for? I mean, the originals are going to cost you about just as much. I mean, if you get lucky, you might get one around $1,200, but I've seen them sell for as much as $2,000. So as a fan service bringing these things back for that price, I think it's worth it. If they wouldn't have reissued the original case, maybe then you could have an argument for maybe not. But comparing this to what you get on a Les Paul Studio today, those things brand new are $14.99. I think it's got enough going on for it that it's worth picking up. I mean, the Swamp Ash, it's cool, it's different, but the cool flame maple necks really sell these, and the fact that it has binding on top of it, I mean, sure, you sacrifice what type of inlays you get on here at the same time, but I think it's worth picking up is what I'm trying to say here. As far as the used market, these appear to hold their value really well because not everybody checks out AMS or Zzounds, so they don't even realize that these things are still available brand new. And since they're usually pre-orders, you have to wait a couple of months, so even if you buy it, you don't like it, there is a way to get out of it. That's my thoughts on this thing. Let's check it out under Blacklight. Darn, I was expecting something a little bit cooler. Maybe this one hasn't aged enough because I just love the wood grain of ash. So I was hoping that would like Blacklight differently. But at least our pickups kind of have an interesting glow to them. Moving up here, yeah, nothing too crazy. I guess part of it is this is a satin finish and those don't tend to glow as much or absorb sweat. I mean, this one, you can kind of see a little bit of absorption right here. So it was certainly used, but not abused. It looks like maybe a little bit of invisible stand rash right here. Cool. As far as the case, don't ever buy one of these if somebody's stolen the original case, because these things are worth quite a bit of money, around $300. But beautiful snakeskin exterior here. Once again, not a fan of the logo being slightly off-center, but other than that, this thing is just really cool. You get the black latches, black handle, and the interior is also black, and these are made by TKL up in Canada, I believe. Yep, made in Canada. As far as case candy, silica packet. Originally, you'll get a polished cloth, owner's manual, pre-pack checklist. Looks like a strap, and also the Gibson multi-tool. Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed taking an in-depth look at this Gibson Voodoo Juju Les Paul. This one's already been spoken for, so don't bother messaging me for it. It's already been shipped out and gone. But don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.